right. It's time for the Dog and Chicken Show. All right, everybody, welcome back. This is episode 7, and might be a little bit of shorter one than we're probably used to. Especially, I think we got to cut back on all the time Phil took last week. What do you think, Steve? How'd that one go?
I loved it. I thought it was great. It kept me entertained. I was laughing my ass off watching that one. So I was glad it worked out so well. I can't wait to see him jump in with us again sometime. Hopefully, I'll be able to join in as well.
Yeah. I think we got some additions to KOE Nation after that episode and conversation. So that was pretty good. Tonight we want to talk a little bit about. We touched on it with the politics and conversation around there where we were chatting about Andrew Yang and yeah, I think Phil was kind of poking fun at him a little bit, but in all honesty, the conversation kind of led down the thoughts of what's the future of the U.S. economy like, and when we start talking about jobs and where this country's going with automation, it it's a bit scary, honestly. You look around out there. Already, automation started years ago, right? You have ATM machines back in the day. Everybody was, oh no, you're going to get rid of bank tellers. No, that didn't go away. But it does pose interesting thoughts. You have self checkouts at big retail stores. So those were kind of the small fries and small introductions to this AI and AI learning, and eventually possibility of these jobs being taken away. So Tony, estimates show, or I guess they don't show anything. They're estimates. I guess that's a terrible way to bring that one up, but they it's estimated that 25% of American labor jobs are going to go away due to automation between multiple fields, whether it be manufacturing or retail, multiple different facets of work out there, and it's almost sparking like the next industrial revolution. Only this is going to be more of an artificial intelligence revolution, I guess, is one way to say it. And it's coming fast. It's coming faster than anybody thinks. So, what are your thoughts on it? And what do you think? What's the way to get around this? How are we going to survive this next debacle that everybody's calling for?
Well, I think first and foremost, I think the table's probably not as accurate as they're predicting. I think it's going to take a little longer than that, mostly due to the fact that there is going to be a lot of blowback from lower wage people who will be out of jobs. You look at it now with the rising demand for a higher minimum wage, you've got to assume that there's going to be just as much blowback, if not more, for people whose jobs will be eliminated. There's going to be a public outcry of people in those lower tier jobs that depend on those jobs to get by, make a living. And I expect to see a lot of unionizing, trying to prevent the bringing in of more automated things that take those jobs away from people. So that'd be my initial thoughts on it. I'm sure you're incredibly familiar with like the self-checkout stuff. You've seen it a lot. You're seeing less and less need for some of those jobs to be filled by actual people, and we are getting more trustworthy work out of machines in some cases. So yeah, I expect the blowback to kind of push the timetable back. That's my initial thought, I guess, if I had an initial thought on the whole ordeal.
No, I think you brought up a good point that I honestly, you brought up something I hadn't thought about, unions, and that's honestly probably what this is going to turn into in a political atmosphere, and that gets bloody, it gets dangerous, and people will sign up for these unions to save their jobs and to make sure they have a paycheck and to come home and feed their families. But at the end of the day, if the business can't afford the labor, so you mentioned minimum wage going up. If they can afford that labor, they're gonna have to reduce that wage dollar. They don't care about head counts most of the time when you're running a
Oh
business.
no. No.
It's about that bottom line and how much profit you're bringing home, especially when you have shareholders at stake. So how do you manage through that? And then anytime there's a unionized thought process in a lot of these, especially your Fortune 500 companies, they want to shut that down real quick, as not only, there's arguments for both sides of it, but those unions can, dip their hands into pockets of not only the employer but the employee. And then things have gotten squirrely in the past with, government and trying to, push policy in Washington D.C. It becomes messy. Now unions sometimes, I'm not going to say I'm not a total, like, I don't hate unions. Unions have served their purpose in the past and have created great safety regulations. And maybe as we approach this digital age where these jobs start going away, they might serve a purpose. It probably won't be safety, but they might serve a purpose to protect these families from losing their jobs. 25%. That's millions.
That's a lot of people. And like you were mentioning before, what is the cost differential to replace somebody, a warm body, with a machine? And can you depend on that machine more than you can depend on an actual person who you would normally hire to fill that role? In a lot of cases, the end cost of a machine is going to be a fraction of what it would take to train and employ somebody for a number of years. That the machine's not going to call in sick, the machine's not going to have to go on maternity leave, the machine's not going to not get along with other machines. So there are a lot of factors that go into having a person fill a role as opposed to having a machine fill a role. And with this, like the self-automated checkouts at Walmart, you're seeing what you've got: two, four, six, typically six or so machines for self-checkout, with what, one person standing by monitoring it, making sure everything's working properly and giving approvals when needed. So you've eliminated the need for what, five, six people there with one person and several machines. Yeah, so that 25%, that might be low. I mean, that might be really, really low.
So once again, that part is kind of small fries. And not sure if you've read up on latest advances in technology, and I'll stick to the retail space because that's my expertise, of course. But things that have been introduced to the field lately. We used to spend hours and hours of time just scanning shelves, checking, changing the price tags and
Sure.
fixing locations of where everything's supposed to go, and everything's a process, and it has to be lined up. Well, it all comes down to, does everything have a home, and where's the home go? Well, now they have the robot that will go through and scan all of your shelves, all of your aisles. It will generate a report that tells you everything that you're out of, what you need to order, what things are missing that should be there, what tags are missing that, hey, this label's missing. You need to go replace it. It goes through and does all of that work, and saving, you think across the country, thousands of man hours of work that we're currently doing today. This is live. This is happening. Another one, we have machines that help unload trucks and sort trucks. You throw it on a roller, it shoots down, the laser scans it and says, this needs to go over here on this cart. This needs to go. This is everywhere now. I've seen this all over the place. Not only in my company, but I know other companies are adopting the similar technology. And so far, it has not eliminated jobs. But the potential, you see what this stuff is capable of doing. Anything that can be taught, a robot can eventually do. And with the advances of not only the technology and the capabilities of it, but the price, it goes down just as fast as the advances in the learning goes up. So we're at a tipping point right now where this is about to skyrocket. And mark my words, in 3-4 years from now, this is going to be a big deal. So whoever gets elected in 2020 is going to have to start dealing with this and handle it right. So back to kind of what Phil and I were talking about, is Andrew Yang an actual viable candidate? I have a feeling in 2022, I think a lot of Americans are going to look back at the 2020 election and go, man, we should have picked that guy.
You bring up a really good point there. You do have to approach this with a very careful mindset because not only is this a new era of the workplace, not not just getting rid of jobs and unemployment, but touching on the political thing, like this is going to be such a big deal for our one side of the aisle or the other. Who's going to take advantage of it the most? Who's going to kind of plant their firm foot in it before the other side can and go, okay, if you want to swing one way or the other, you got to join us because we're taking our flag and we're staking claim right here, right now. But you touched on something else there with the fact you said these jobs that can be learned, not even with the lower entry stuff, the jobs that take months of training to learn how to do. Why pay somebody to go through all that hassle if they're going to take a better job the first chance they get?
Not
Or
only
if they're not
that,
going to be.
you have to pay insurance and
Yes.
just the gobs and gobs of
Yes.
taxes on all these employees. Like, it's expensive.
Yeah. Why pay for that, and why put your trust in somebody you don't know when instead of training them for months on end, all you have to do is this. Okay, now this machine knows how to do what would have taken 6 months for this person to learn. Yeah, the appeal is undeniable. The way it would work and improve a lot of these businesses is unquestionable. Yeah, so I think the time frame gets pushed back a little bit, like I said, because of the blowback, but this is going to be a big tool on the political spectrum. This is going to be a big thing with unions and lower tier and higher tier jobs. It's going to go all across the board. This is, like you said, it's going to be a way of life, and it's going to be a big hot button issue. I believe you're right, here very, very soon.
Yeah, and I think as we move into the age, I know we're probably feeling like we're getting older, as we used to be the young pups that always, old people are
Oh
out of
shit,
touch. But
man,
man, we're
I don't feel young at all anymore, man.
so
This last week.
we're slowly becoming the ones that are out of touch with the younger crowd, and this
Yep.
this younger crowd coming up, they're not going to care about a lot of things that we cared about. We grew up with family close by and present, friends close by and present. We spent time together. Man, me and you grew up when cell phones just came out, and if you had a cell
Yeah.
phone, it was
Yep.
awesome. Like, these kids
Yeah.
nowadays, they don't have to
No.
physically touch or look at somebody.
I was 16 when I got my first cell phone, and yeah, it was a flip phone. It actually had colors on it, and people were so amazed by it. Then, I mean, not even 4 or 5 years after that, there's kids riding bikes that had nicer phones than me, and I'm like, what the hell is this? Now, I mean, they have them before they can even learn to ride a bike. I think it's weird because, like you said, we dealt with interacting face to face, being in the same room. You don't have to do that anymore. I can keep in touch with people very, very easily with this, just as easily as I can. Actually, sometimes even better than I can in person, or even just calling them on the phone anymore. This way, with your Snapchat and your Facebook and all the other platforms of social media, yeah, it's almost easier doing it that way than it is face to face, person to person. So that's another thing I wanted to touch on with not just automating labor jobs or retail jobs, things of that nature. When do we start automating the jobs that have been outsourced to other countries? Like, I'll just bring up an example, of course, because I get my weekly phone call from DirecTV trying to get me to come back. Well, usually it's somebody, either barely in this country or somebody clearly not in this country, right? You can hardly understand them. You're like, well, if you really want me to, come back, you better make me a sweet deal. They never do. It's an ongoing saga. But when does that jump up? Instead of outsourcing it because it's cheaper, when does that get replaced? Because a lot of those are so cut and dry. Like it can't take a lot of effort to train someone to be able to, hey, this person left, call back, try to get them back. They're not going to come back. but you'll get about 1 out of every 20 if you offer the right deal. That's a job that could be done by a computer, like pretty soon. Like you said, with AI, that's going to be huge. That's going to blow up. That's going to start taking those jobs and at a fraction of the cost. So I think even outsourcing is going to feel the blowback on this.
Yeah, no. So you mentioned when will that be replaced? I get this phone call 3 times a day. Tony, it's already being done. I get it from a different phone number all the time. It's one of those scamming calls.
I'm calling in reference to your federal student loan. I need to discuss your repayment options with some new changes that have taken effect recently. So if you could please just give me a call back. My number is 866-292-5775.
Is that doxing?
I'll give you a reference number.
Yeah.
If you would have this handy when you call back, it just makes things a lot easier. Your reference number is 8.
So I've answered that call before, and she talks to you. It's not a person.
Yeah.
They
That's why I
respond
brought
to
that
your
up.
words. Like, it's
Yeah.
here. And the scammers always figure it out first. It was kind of like porn and video games reference that we always used to make fun of back in the day. But right now, it's scammers. Scammers adapt the newest AI and newest technology first because they know it will trick people. And if not
Yes.
everybody's using it,
No.
they're going to jump on board. There's going to be laws in the future about how this AI interacts with us on phone calls specifically because of when we become old geezers, we're going to get scammed out of stuff because it sounds so real sometimes.
Yeah, and it is. It's I've gotten a few of those phone calls, like you said, and yeah, it's almost unsettling how well already some of these scam calls can pick up on words that you're saying and interact with you, because yeah, like you said, it's still in its infancy a bit, but yeah, it's going to grow, and it's going to be able to be done by what, one guy with one big computer with what, 100 screens, able to interact with a bunch of different people and scam a bunch of people at one time. It's very efficient. I'll give them that. It is a very efficient thing. But like you said, yeah, they get a hold of this technology early because that's their business. They know what they're doing. You got to stay ahead of the curve. And unfortunately, this is one of those things. And yeah, a lot of people are getting, like, I had what was it, week and a half or 2 weeks ago, Saturday I was working. I got a call from like Minneapolis, and usually I don't answer it, but I answered it, and it was actually a fraud service. I'm like, okay, and the guy didn't really sound all that professional on the other end, so I'm like, okay, clear, it's a scammer. But then he rattled off the numbers of my checking account, and I'm like, okay. And he rattled off a couple of charges. They were for like 25, 26 bucks at Home Depot and Lowe's in Omaha. And I'm like, well, I was in Omaha on Tuesday. This was for Friday. Yeah, I wasn't in Omaha. He's like, okay, yeah. Well, we've let one go through. We'll get that credited back to you. The other one got stopped. So at some point when I was at the zoo, somebody was able to access whatever, I think, and tried to make purchases at these small purchases. Like, how do they, like, I was so shocked that they even caught such a low dollar amount. You'd think they'd try to get several $100 out of it, but no, it was like 25, 26 bucks. I was so surprised that they were able to catch that quickly for such a small amount.
Well, it's all data mining. So I would be in big trouble because I buy stuff everywhere online, different stores. Like, I'm all over the place.
Well, yeah, but you're all over the country, you
Right.
know. So your info's everywhere. So keeping track of those charges, that's going to be even harder with you bouncing from town to town.
Yeah, so that used to happen to me a lot where I would buy something from a website and make a purchase of a t-shirt or something like that, and my card would get shut off immediately and my phone would ring and they'd be like, "Hey, do you want to approve this charge? This looks suspicious." "No, dude, I want this shirt." Like, let me buy my shirt, dude. Like, that stuff used to happen. It doesn't happen to me at all anymore. Not only because it's data mining. They see where you're traveling. They see that you make purchases throughout a geographic area. My geographic area, between where I work, of jumping between Minnesota, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, and then popping down to Nebraska every once in a while. Unless I'm outside of that region, they probably wouldn't flag anything because they would think, "Oh, well, yeah, he's just traveling again." So I want to take a step back before we went on to that topic. I was going on a track here, and I think we talked about it, being the old geezers and the kids coming up today, and how this is going to be sensitive in the future. Because you think, who's your future voters, and who's going to be
Yep.
voting not only the 2020 election, but think 2024, and you're going to start getting younger and younger, and not everybody's going to be all mad at this generation that's and the millennials. It's not going to be a big deal about them anymore. We're going to start getting mad at a new generation of people. But the
Yeah, that's
reality,
true.
we already think millennials have a diluted sense of reality when it comes to the technology they've been introduced with.
Entitlement.
Entitlement, but I call it a diluted personality because you don't have to be face to face, kind of like we were talking. It's gonna be worse. That diluted conversation is gonna be worse. It's we seen the outrage culture. We see all of these movements that come out, and you see people jumping online threatening to hit people and threats of violence, when if that guy was standing right in front of me, or
Yeah.
girl was standing right in front of me, they would never act
Right.
that way.
Well, there's a big part of it. You lose that experience and learning how to interact with a person face to face, because it is very, very different than even what you and I are doing right now via webcam. That interaction face to face, that's personal. It's a personal thing. Like being able to actually physically look somebody in the eye is a much harder task to do than me looking into a camera. So yeah, interacting with people through text on a message board or Facebook or this, it's a much different animal than, yeah, you're going to lose that. That's one of those communicative things that we're going to lose as generations keep going.
But those are going to be the ones that are going to be in charge of the AI taking over. Those are going to be the ones in charge of how unions try to navigate through this and try to help people, assuming that's going to be the purpose, is to help people. Those are going to be the people making the decisions that impact you and I and our kids and our parents and the people we know and love as we move forward. So there's a lot of concern there with how fast this is moving, and
Sure.
how little the conversation is around it, or not only amongst even amongst us. And I don't know, this is probably the first time you and I have actually talked about automation and jobs being destroyed by it in the next 10-15 years. That's not a
Yeah.
normal conversation.
No.
Nobody's having that conversation.
No.
That's the problem. We need to have that conversation, because if it doesn't happen in 10 years, which it probably, if it doesn't happen,
we're going to start seeing it for sure. It's going to become a problem by then for sure.
right. And you just, like some of the stuff that I mentioned, that is scratching the surface of what's going on out there. There is way more between GPS technology and being able to track folks, all this crazy stuff you've seen on, different TV shows. That stuff is real. It is happening. You look at not only social media and the data mining that they're going after.
Here, look. All I got to do is this. Where'd it go? Oh, look at that. There's a bunch of people I know.
I just see a white screen.
Oh, yeah. There's a bunch of people on my Snapchat map.
Yeah.
Look how easy
We
that
know
was.
where you are.
Yeah, look how easy that was. Let me ask you this. What do you think automation in the job force will do to population numbers?
So that's an interesting topic. I suspect, as what's going to happen if you have a 25% job rate decrease, like these jobs just go away, these people have no jobs, they're eventually going to turn out homeless. You're going to have a huge financial problem in a lot of these families. Historically, less prosperous societies tend to flourish with more and more children. And the way our government works and the way we levy votes as people in power in government, they will subsidize these folks to have more kids so they can get more government assistance. Unfortunately, maybe that's just going a little deeper down the economic thoughts of the political spectrum. But it is a proven fact, the more prosperous your society is and the more money and wealth there is, the less children that anybody has, as everybody's trying to achieve a higher status and higher wealth. They wait longer to have kids and they have less
Sure.
kids. So we're on the trajectory of, if every country in the world was like America, we would be declining in the amount of people, which obviously that's not the case right now. Is there's only a select few that have the power and wealth that America does, but many are coming up. So we're seeing the trend of kids slowly starting to taper off, and there's estimates that we'll hit around that, like I think it was like 10 billion people or 12 billion before it starts to taper off. As that point, we've amassed so much wealth, there's no need, and people will start slowing down, and the wealthier and healthier everybody becomes, the better off. Now, with a job loss situation like this, you see the opposite reaction. Now, will this be global, or will this be localized into, the big superpowers, or near superpower countries? So that would have a less of an impact on the world's population. But it's an interesting thought and something to think about. Now, how long does it last as well? So you look at the Great
Well,
Depression.
there you go. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
look at the Great Depression. You had this massive job loss, and I don't know if people were like bunnies during that time frame necessarily, but
Well, there was no cable.
right, you had to do something, folks. But at the same time, healthcare was scarce and hard to come by. I don't know. It'd be interesting to research some data on that, but I honestly, I don't know what it would do to the population numbers. I would see a lot more chances of civil unrest. Do you think it's crazy right now with Antifa and
Oh, hell.
all these guys in mass and yellow jackets in Paris and all this crap? You
Yeah.
think that's bad? You take 25% of this country's jobs away, and you see what happens. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, all of us that lost our jobs, because Tony, you and I would be in that pool.
Oh,
We
yeah.
would. My job could be automated.
Yeah.
It wouldn't take much to get a computer to do what I do most days. I know yours could be automated
Oh, yeah. In most
easily.
cases, it is on a bigger scale.
Right,
type
you push the
place.
buttons and make it automated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Less
So
people can do that.
so we would probably be the ones that would get hired as security guards to stop everybody else from killing the rich people. I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Well, no, but that's just it. And what do people start doing when they don't have a job to go to? Does that affect, population numbers, or is that already something that we see a decrease in from a totally unrelated? Well, there's other hot button issues I think that are going to completely lower our population numbers altogether. But yeah, that's a topic for another time. But yeah, like you said, our jobs, yeah, definitely, they could easily be done for the most part by computers. And yeah, like you said, very, very soon, it's going to be a big issue. It's going to be a political swing vote. It's going to be, somebody's going to jump on this and find a way to capitalize on it in a big, big way. It's going to be a matter of who does that. I think that's a very interesting thought, personally.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right on. So we're not going to belabor this topic, because I honestly, I think this is a good opening to the discussion. There's a lot more to be researched and more to be said, as we've kind of alluded to so far. My big thing right now for folks listening at home: send us your questions, comments, or what would you do? How would you handle this situation? We somebody's got to have an idea. Andrew Yang apparently is the only one out there that does, and he's running for president. Everybody thinks he's a joke. So this could potentially be a huge problem that affects all of us. So let's chat about it. Let's talk about it. Let's bring that up. We're going to move on to a couple other topics here. So one thing that I want to bring up, Tony, tell me about your weekend.
Oh boy. So yeah, wow, it was rough. It was really, really rough. We were supposed to do this yesterday, but instead I went and played poker Saturday night. and I got home at 11 a.m. So it was a very long morning of poker, and I had to recover. Actually, today I think I was just sweating out all the whiskey I drank because I went through an entire bottle of Jameson. It was ridiculous. Hate doing it. Didn't even win any money. So yeah, it was kind of rough. And now my wife will be home in about 5 minutes to drop off the kids so she can go back to work. So yeah, it's been kind of a hectic week and a half or so around here. But one thing I was gonna mention during the poker game, somebody was sitting there going, "Oh, I should have went home and watched UFC." I'm like, it's gonna be really good, but I can tell you who wins without even looking. Jones, Nunez. Yeah, there you go. Guess what? Am I wrong? What happened? You give us a quick rundown.
Right. So Jones wins by a split decision. Honestly, I don't think you won that fight. There's going to be a rematch.
I saw something about Dana White says, "Oh no, you don't belong judging if you think he didn't win this fight." Yeah, it looked like there's a bit of a controversy on it.
Yeah, Jones did not fare very well. They beat the hell out of each other's legs. They both ended up in a wheelchair in post-fight interviews. So it was interesting. I gave total kudos to his opponent when it came to toughness. His knee was given out in the first round. He stayed standing, stayed kicking, stayed punching. He did not stop for anything. And then as far as moving to the co-main event, she's a beast.
Yeah, dude, she's moving into that territory of
she's taking out every former champ.
Well, yeah, she's like she has such an impressive resume of who she's destroyed. I mean, we're talking like not even 10 minutes. I think it was like 9.5 minutes worth of like the 4-0 record, the most impressive names of Rousey and Holm and Cyborg and what's the other one I'm forgetting? Starts with an Miesha Tate. Yep. It wasn't even like 10 minutes worth of octagon time with how she's beating them.
She just steamrolls them.
It's incredible.
Then I wanted to share. We'll make sure I get my computer audio because it's just no good without hearing the crowd on this one. My favorite moment of this weekend's UFC fights right here, ladies and gentlemen.
Back in there for this one. Ariane Celeste is here. Brittany Palmer, Brooklyn Wren also on hand. Gamebred is in the building. And these guys just flapping gums at each other. Any chance they get. The fight clock is brought to you by Modelo. Wow! One of the greatest knockouts you'll ever see!
Oh my goodness! That is something else.
One of the best memes I've seen with that is I'm getting all kinds of noise here. Ugh. Anyway, so one of the best memes I've seen with that whole thing was they showed him knocked out on the ground, but he had his like thumb up in his glove. He was like doing this little thumbs up. And so somebody, it was on Twitter, and then somebody was like, "Oh my God, he wasn't out." And then all of a sudden it shows Masvidal on the side slapping the floor, and another guy goes, "Oh my God, Masvidal tapped out. Ben Askren's 20-0."
Oh shit, that's great. It sounded like a pretty good card. I really wish I could have seen that one. I wish they would have had it on at the poker game. Would have given me a reason not to drink so much. I've got a couple more minutes here, though. I wanted to touch on something else. I don't know if you've read any of the graphic novel issues of The Walking Dead. I've been reading it for probably 5 or so years. I started late. I got caught up in a very quick time because once you get going, it just consumes you. You got to plow through it. You binge watch it, just like you do with Netflix. But this is obviously a lot more graphic and a lot more reading. Unexpectedly, issue 193, super long issue. It was more like 3 issues in one.
Hold on, is there a spoiler alert we need to call out here?
There is a spoiler alert in case anybody hasn't already seen. Spoiler alert. Unexpectedly, 15 or so year time jump out of nowhere. Boom. Done. Over. No warning. No heads up. It's over. You get to the last page and there's the end. And I went, holy shit. Like literally, this is what I did. Literally,
So it
jaw
was
on the floor.
it was like worse than the Sopranos ending. Like,
No, dude, this was beautiful. It
oh,
was
it was beautiful.
incredible.
Okay,
It was
I
great.
thought you were saying it skips ahead 15 years and then
It
it just
did.
says the end.
No, it skips ahead 15 years, super long volume, and you're trying to think. You're like, man, this is a. You assume he's dreaming. You assume this is Carl dreaming, right? You do, but it goes along and it's not. And you're like, man, I guess they're really going with this.
So is
And
it
then
like 15 years of Carl's lost life, kind of like, you know, the 30 years of Jesus or whatever?
no, like Rick died in the issue or so before, right? Cliffhanger. Rick's dead in the next issue. That's it for
Spoiler
him.
alert. Spoiler
Yeah.
alert.
Yeah.
If everybody didn't know, Rick does die, as all humans do.
Yeah, weird, crazy, right? And then you're like, well, where do they go from here? Where do they go from here? They end it, and it was a beautiful ending. I loved it. I thought it was amazing. I never saw it coming. I avoided spoilers for a few days. It was awesome. I want to give big kudos to Kirkman for really knocking this one out of the park with your timing. Awesome.
Awesome. Sounds great, man. So typically we'll run through and we'll like try to recover a whole bunch of old news stories, but I know Tony's got a short window of time, and
Yeah, I
he's
got a minute or so here.
yeah. Wifey's gonna be hollering any minute now.
Yep.
So we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up, folks. What we really need to do though with this episode is I want to hear back. We need some feedback, whether you hit us up on Facebook or comment down below or whatever that looks for you guys. Really need to hear back on the automation thought process. Where do you want to go with this episode? What more do you want to hear about it? Also, any prior episodes, what else you want to hear, but we need to get some more interaction.
Absolutely.
I want to hear what you guys want to hear, so we can have some topics that lean towards you guys. This is an interesting one. We barely even started scratching on this
Oh
one.
yeah, lots to cover yet for sure.
Absolutely, tons to cover here. So hopefully next week we'll be back with the normal length episode, normal format. But until then, appreciate everybody for tuning in. Tony, any last words?
Nope, I thought very good start off to the discussion. Glad to be back. Glad Phil could fill in for me last week, and I know we've got a few ideas of where we could go with him in the future, a couple topics to cover, and I don't know what you want to do for sure next week, but I know we had a couple ideas, so I don't know. What are you thinking for next week?
Next week, if we can't top off on this topic at all, we have plenty. We got murder mysteries, we got political topics, we got sports analogies and sport follow-up of paying college players. We got, of course, us being big Husker fans, we could follow up on and see where we're at heading into the fall. I know everybody's coming out with their preseason rankings and what we're expecting out of the team this year. There's tons of stuff to talk about, so I'm open.
Absolutely. I'm ready to talk. Let's do this.
All right. Again, thanks for tuning in, folks. Look forward to hearing back from you. We'll see you all next week. Have a great, safe week. Love you. Bye.
Peace.